hit it didn't just hit the world, but it affected the church. Um, Arguments within the church family that seemingly led to churches splitting. That was one of those things, and we wanted to keep things so in house that we wouldn't even bring people in to help facilitate what was happening in our churches. And so, we need to talk about it. And the reason that, again, we want to talk about it is so that we can move from this hurt that we have and move to healing. And so let's just talk here for a minute. What are some of these abuses that we are suffering? What are some of what are the parts of this elephant that's in the room that's that has caused damage in the past or is causing damage in the church right now? Again, I think one of those is um, how we have addressed certain sexual sins, if you will. And for us, even though we don't say it, and we always quote this idea of no um, there are no degrees on sin, or all sin is equal, and there's no big sin or little sin. We have to be honest in that we have treated certain sins differently than we have treated others. I'll give you a case in point. We have not done well, number one, in addressing pedophilia at all, except in the Catholic Church realm. Uh, we have not done a good job in addressing homosexuality, LGBT community. We have not done well with that, and we have not addressed the infidelities in the church. And what has happened is we will accept a person that has committed, infidelities in their marriage and allow them to still be in the church and sit there with no recourse, with no conversation. But man, don't allow this young fella to bring in his boyfriend, because we can't have that. And so we address that differently than we do the man who has committed adultery. And then, as I said earlier, we don't even broach the subject of pedophilia. How do we deal with that? How do we address that? What parameters should we take? It's almost as if we are scared to even talk about it. We don't even address it. And so if we are to be able to help people in their positions, we have to be able um, to really address these subjects. We have to be really able to talk about this stuff. We can't keep putting this stuff under the rug. We can't keep hiding this and acting like it does not affect us. It affects them, but it doesn't affect us. Can I tell you that the people that you are trying to disciple, the people that you're trying to introduce to Christ, the people that you're trying to bring into the church, they are going to come with issues from the world that we have to address. And what I love about this, that's why I hate these pictures that we see, of Jesus. He's some, blue-eyed, long-haired hippie that's just looking all soft and whatnot. Jesus was not a punk, okay? He addressed issues head on. Now, he may not have addressed them like the people of his day would have liked them to be addressed, but he addressed us. It's us, the church, who has become the punks, because we either won't address it, we'll allow this stuff to go on, we'll allow people to sit in their hurt, we will allow people to sit in their pain, and then we will take on the idea either they're going to adjust to us or they're going to be in a problem. And I just don't believe that's the proper way for us to handle it. Now, let me be honest with you. Let me be upfront with you. I do not have all the answers. But I think that if we can just address it, my wife used to she still tells me this to this day. You cannot fix what you don't know is wrong. And so us trying to paint this elephant the same color as our walls, or us trying to cover him up with our sofa covers, does not mean that he is not there. We've just painted the elephant. He's still there. And so we've got to get to a point where we can get him out of this place. I agree with you, Delante, that there's this sect of ultra conservatism that does not allow certain things to be addressed within the church. I agree with you, but at some point, if we're going to help people progress in their discipleship, we have to be able to address the things that they're doing that's hindering them from being close to Christ. And this is the other part. We've got to address the things that we are doing as the church collectively that's keeping people from getting close to Christ. Because we'll talk to people all day about, we'll talk to people all the time about what they're doing that's keeping them from drawing close to Christ. But do we ever stop to think about what are we doing as a collective body that's keeping people from coming um, close to Christ? What roadblocks, what hindrances are we putting up that's keeping people from realizing their relationship in Christ? And so, what I want to be able to do, over the next few episodes, and we won't be able to do it all in this episode, is I want to really address these issues within within the church that we just for some reason refuse to talk about, and this has caused people harm. This has caused people hurt. This has caused some people to walk away from Christ. This has caused people to walk away from the church, and they label us as hypocrites because you're jumping on them for this thing when they see you out there doing that thing. And so we've got to uncover this elephant. We've got to address this elephant, because this is what I believe. The elephant in the room has taken up so much space in our churches that we have not left room for God. It is impossible for us to put this elephant in the room and then we're trying to also see God. This elephant is taking up the space that we cannot see God. And also, this elephant has gotten so big that we are not able to see each other. And many of us are looking at this elephant from our perspective, because I'm looking at the tail end of this elephant, and you're looking at the trunk end, and so we have two different perspectives of this elephant. And really, what happens is we want to talk about the elephant from our perspective instead of us asking the question, why is the elephant in here anyway? I heard a guy say once, in reference to, he was talking about marriage and how you have to, be on guard in your marriage. And this is what he said. He said, it's easier to keep the devil out than to try to get him out. And so I believe when we look at the church, it would be easier for us if when we see this elephant coming, because this is what I know. Elephants make a lot of noise when they're coming. You can see the trees shaking. You can see the ground rumbling when the elephant comes. And when this elephant is coming, we don't wait for him to get in the house before we address him. As we see him coming, we should be addressing him. And so we're trying to address the elephant from our perspectives, our different perspectives, because we're looking at him from different parts. Because not only does this elephant that's in the room, whatever this issue is, whatever these issues are, and we're gonna talk about them. So y'all, talk to me in the comments about what you believe these issues are. But not only do these issues keep us from seeing God, who should be our main focus, but it also keeps us from seeing each other. That's why, just thinking, one of the issues that we look at in the church that we're not willing to address is the white supremacy element um, that has permeated Western Christianity. But I hate to hear people say, "I don't see color," because I need you to understand that attached to my color, attached to my race, attached to my ethnicity is my culture, my heritage, all the things that my people have gone through. And if you cannot appreciate my color, then you cannot appreciate my culture. You cannot appreciate my struggle. You cannot appreciate where I'm coming from. That's why when I'm in these religious settings, you're looking at me and you're expecting me to operate in a manner that's sensitive to your culture and your experiences and your heritage, while not respecting my experiences and my heritage. My good friend Dr. Amar Sahili, he did a wonder, and he's doing a wonderful conversation about that, and he has a book out. Here it is, as a matter of fact, Eerie Silence. I would suggest that you go out and get this book, Eerie Silence. But he addresses this idea of this white Jesus. And when a lot of people come to the perspective of the Bible, they have this idea of a white Jesus, and so they have an idea of a white background of people from an Eastern society, and so they believe that those of us who are melanated, those of us who are of African descent, that we have to conform to their idea of Christianity. And so those are just some of the subjects that we're looking at as we talk about the elephant in the room. We're going to really address these issues. We're going to talk. I have to be honest with you. I want to put this disclaimer out there that there are some things um, that will probably cause harm from some of us. Some of us may go back to a place that we didn't want to go back to. But I just believe that if we are going to really help people to heal, if we're going to help people to move towards this relationship with Christ, one of the things, let me say it like this. Christ says that he is the mediator between man and God, right? And somehow we, the church, feels like we should be the mediator between man and Christ. So, in order to get to Christ, you have to come through the church first, talk to us, and then we'll talk to Christ for you, and then Christ can go to God on your behalf. I think we've kind of missed that and messed that up in a way. We should be those people that help shepherd people to Christ, help move people to Christ so that they can have this relationship with Christ, so that they can step into Christ's story. They can step into the story of Christ. They can develop this relationship, and they can talk to him so that he can talk to God on their behalf. But we have to deal with our stuff. We've got to deal with our mess. We've got to deal with our junk, our baggage. And we've got to be real about what our baggage is. We've got to be real about what this elephant is, because not addressing this elephant has caused irreparable harm. It has caused irreparable hurt. It has caused people to not want to have anything to do with the church and not having anything to do with Christ. And so we've got to talk about these issues. Um, Again, not trying to necessarily, pick on anyone or pull back a scab and pick at the wound. We really want to be able to use this outlet as the neosporin, if you will, that we apply to the wound so that we can start to heal. And so we'll address those. We'll address how we have treated single mothers, young girls who for whatever reason, um, went out and they got pregnant outside of wedlock, and they had these children. We'll address our stance because we come from we're pro-life. Um, we have a pro-life stance generally in the church, but the more I live, we don't necessarily have a pro-life stance as much as we have a pro-birth stance, because you will tell these young girls, don't abort the child, but then when the child comes into the world, we're not willing to help her raise this child. We want her to bring this child into the world, and then we distance ourselves when the child is here. Um, we'll have this pro life, this pro birth stance, and or what we call a pro life stance, but yet we think people should fry, in the electric chair, or die by execution or whatnot. And so, we'll talk about how we have dealt with single mothers in the past, or better yet, how we have not dealt with single mothers in the past. We'll deal with how we have treated the LGBT community, and how do we navigate. Again, I am no expert by any means on any of that. So if you would like to chime in on that stuff, I would ask you, please, help me out with this, because I'm not an expert on this by any means. Um, and so I just want us to be able to deal with the real conversation. I would even ask that you go back and you really look at the Luke 15 text, because this is a young boy who brought shame on the family name and the family honor in front of the community. But when his father received him, he received his son in the same way that his son left. His son walked away publicly. The father received him publicly. He allowed his son to understand that I know what they're saying about you, but in this family, we're here for you. And he gave him, you will remember, he gave him a robe. And I believe that the robe did not just signify that, hey, he has returned to his rightful place as my son, but I believe also that robe was a sense of his father covering him. And what we have done in the church is we have not covered people as much as we have tried to cover up some things. We've got to understand there's a difference between covering people in the biblical sense. It says that love covers a multitude of sins. There's a difference in covering people and covering up for people. We have tried for too long. We have for too long covered up for people, and it has caused us to have a bad name in the community, to have a bad name amongst the people that know us. And so we don't want to cover up for anybody. We always want to cover people with the love of Christ, but we cannot continue to cover up the things that are unhealthy in the church, that are causing these symptoms of spiritual abuse. And because people are really walking away from the church with if with post-traumatic stress disorder. They don't even want to come to the church. They don't want to even hear about the church, and they don't want to believe anything that people are saying. And so we have got to come to a point where we no longer cover this stuff up, but really expose the problems. Listen to me. Expose the problems and not necessarily expose the people. Because I believe there is a system by which we handle people, um, but we still need to get these thoughts out there. We need to get those problems out there. We need to get those issues out there. And so I'm asking you, help me to see these problems, these issues, this multifaceted pieces of this elephant that we need to address in the church. Again, um, the idea of sexuality in the church, whether it be, infidelity, homosexuality, the LGBT, um, sex outside of marriage, divorce, Um, you know, we just to talk about that a minute, and we're going to try to address these over the next few weeks, and we won't get to all of them. But man, we have made some people in the church feel like they can't even get married again. Can you imagine the idea that you have to be single for the rest of your life? And so we tell people, because this happened in your marriage, all these years ago, you can no longer get married. But then we tell them you can't have sex outside of marriage. So we just throw this stuff at people, and we never give them the how of it. And so, I mean, we just and what we're causing people to do, honestly, when we don't address these elephant issues, what we're causing people to do, honestly, is to make a decision about, we're nearly giving them this gun, to use an old adage that we often use, and we're giving them this gun, and we're telling them to play Russian roulette. Either you do this or you do that. And what has happened is a lot of people are saying, you know what, man, I'll just rather, if this is how this is going to be, I think I'd rather take my chances. I'd rather take my chances with God at the judgment. And we should not put people in that place. We are causing people to say, wait a minute, you're telling me that this is what this says? Man, listen, if that's how that reads, then I would rather take my chances with God at the judgment than to live in this way that you're telling me. And so we've got to we've got to address these. I agree, Amber. Ignorance is not bliss. It's dangerous. It is dangerous, and that's why we can no longer feign ignorance and feign this idea of we don't know what's going on, because we see it. We've seen the harm that has been caused to people. And so when we look at this idea that we are to be a embassy, because we're ambassadors for Christ, right? And so, when ambassadors live in the embassy, and what happens is this embassy is located in foreign territory. And what happens is, because he is located in foreign territory, those who are citizens of the kingdom, of those who are seeking asylum from their oppressive government, they run to that asylums, they run to the embassy seeking help. And so if we are to be an embassy in a foreign land, that is, dominated by Satan and all of his tactics, and people are running to us for asylum, we are no better than the idea of we need to build a wall. And what has happened is we have built a wall around the church, and what has happened is we're not allowing people with their issues to come in, and we're not allowing people with issues within the church to go out. Why? Because we don't want people to see that we're not as perfect as we have claimed to be. And I want you to understand that the church has a perfect creator, and the church is perfectly created. The church, because we are human, is not perfect. Look, folks, I've run out of time. I went way over time. I appreciate you for joining the conversation. Put in the comments some of these elephant issues that we need to discuss, and we'll talk about them over the next few weeks. Maybe we'll give about 3 weeks of attention to it, but we have to address this elephant in the room. We have to talk about this because people are hurting. People are living in shame. People are far away from Christ because of how we have made them to feel about their issues, and because we swept these issues under the rug. I appreciate y'all. I've run out of time. Thank y'all for being a part of this. I'll see you back here next Friday, 6 p.m., and we'll talk about the elephant in the room. God bless.